I helped a man climb a mountain once, and I also realized that I had reached the top.
Do you think the education system we have in this country is broken?
Our educational systems are not doing a good job of teaching people core life skills. I used to have a bit of a debate internally of, okay, well, am I selling my soul on Wall Street? We need not sacrifice one for the other.
Someone of Elon Musk's caliber also talks about that being a potential problem for mankind. At the same time, nobody is stopping AI.
We need to also ensure that we're not forgetting those structural advantages.
Hello and welcome to Inception to Infinity. I am Anupam Satyasheel, the founder and CEO of Occams Advisory. And today we have the privilege of having with us Emil Vasilev. Emil is a finance leader. He has spent time on Wall Street. He leads CFO Suite and the strategic initiatives of startups and private equity-backed companies. Emil has had an illustrious career starting from Wall Street, moving to private equity, and now being in California, where he works with Chevy Technology as a finance leader. Emil also is deeply spiritual, and he teaches spirituality in spare time. We will ask him about that. Emil, welcome to Inception to Infinity.
Thank you very much, Anupam. Great to be here.
So before we get into all the exciting stuff you do and you want to tell people about, I'm curious to ask about your childhood. You grew up in Bulgaria in 1990s, 80s and 90s. What was that like?
Yeah, I haven't thought about that time in a while. I would say overall, it was very formative. During those years, the country itself was going through a lot of changes. Communism had just collapsed in different parts of Europe. The USSR had just collapsed. So Bulgaria, being a kind of a satellite ally of the USSR, was heavily impacted. And so um, there was some hardship. There was some need to kind of optimize your resources. I was raised by my mother, so she did a great job just holding down the fort through those times. And then through the 90s, it was also a lot of fun. And in the early 2000s, because being a teenager in a country where rules were not strictly enforced, meant that you could have a lot of freedom. So I remember those times very fondly, and still have a lot of great friends who live there, who live around the world, and yeah.
You speak about formative years and how it plays a big role in who you become and how you deal with life. It seems that in today's world, at least in the USA, our teenagers are going through an identity crisis.
Mm.
Many of them, even in their 20s and 30s, are living in their parents' basement, not having a social life. And from what I read and hear, it almost seems like isolation is a real risk.
Mm.
You work a lot with students on school campuses, and I know you educate them on how to live a healthier life through Art of Living and Sky Meditation program. Tell us more about it. How is that experience? What are they going through, and how real is the crisis?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's spot on. It's in many ways the level of comfort that we experience as society now relative to hundreds or even years ago or decades ago is unprecedented, right? We have everything. We have access to amazing food, amazing amenities, um, and a much bigger part of society has that access. Like in some ways, we live better. Middle class person now lives much better than a king has lived 200 years ago in terms of access to things and ability to instantly uh, make things happen that you desire. Uh, the flip side of that is that, yeah, all these other things kind of emerge when there's no hardship to focus on. then for some people, that just creates almost like idle energy, where you're comfortable enough, but you don't, there's almost too much free time to focus on other things, which if not, especially in the young age, if it's not channeled properly, I think could become a problem. So I think that's one sort of thing that I've observed. Um, I think people are also a lot more conscious about the world. So part of the reason why they may not be as focused on different goals or figuring out their life is because they see that what has been promised to their parents or even them in society has not worked. The idea of an American dream, you work hard all your life and then you have money and that comfort equals happiness. A lot of young people see that very clearly that that's not the case. So they're figuring out their way through that. And I'd say the third element of what I've observed is just purely our educational systems are not doing a good job of teaching people core life skills. How do I deal with my emotions? How do I deal with the ups and downs of life as they happen? And even simply, how do I keep my energy high in any given day? So these things that you could say are basic are never properly spelled out to people, and they get caught up into various unhealthy ways of dealing with the stresses of life because they have not been shown any better.
You touched upon something which I worry about all day long. I have young children, 11 and 9 years old, soon to be 12 and 10 years old. You talked about education system. I personally feel that it's letting the world down. Do you think the education system we have in this country is broken?
It needs some updating. I think I think there's issues. It's like anything that's kind of outlived its purpose. So many things in society, technology, the way people um, kind of think about the world has shifted tremendously in the last 10 to 20 years, right? But the educational system has not quite caught up with that. Um, and ironically, I think going back to the basics, people being taught the basic skills of life is something that's been missing, which is sort of a foundational aspect of what a good educational system should be.
Talking about educational systems, you are in your spare time an educator. You teach people how to live a healthier life. From what I understand, you have done a great job personally of balancing the material world and the spiritual world. And even though I haven't learned directly from you, I know of people who have learned from you. You are a great student and teacher of how to balance the two sides of life, the microcosm internally and the macrocosm externally, and how to balance the material wants and desires that we have with this spiritual enlightenment, which we all need. Tell us more about it. What do you teach? How do you teach it? And what's the summary of that teaching for the audience on this podcast?
Absolutely. I think, well, first of all, my journey on this subject started when I was working as an analyst on Wall Street, and pulling all-nighters, working consistently until very late. And then, given that I was in my early 20s, I was also um, partying on the weekends until even later to get rid of that stress and that feeling of being locked in my cubicle. And after a couple years of doing that, physically and mentally, I felt just exhausted. And frankly, I was depressed at that time, looking back. And it was a combination of physical exhaustion, lack of proper habits, and just this more deeper questioning of, is this really what I'm meant to be doing here? Like, is this is this my purpose? Is this why I studied so hard throughout college? Why I stressed so much while being an international student to get a job with a visa? And all these kinds of things. And so I felt kind of empty. I had the resources and the profession that I really wanted to have. And I was living in New York, um, surrounded by friends, but I felt empty. And so that prompted me, that kind of a low, as oftentimes happens in life, prompted a course correction. Many a time when we're happy and things are smooth, or when things are kind of mediocre or medium, there isn't enough of an incentive internally or a push to change. But for me, this low is what pushed me to change. And the catalyst for that change was me learning the sky breath practice, the Sudarshan Kriya breathing technique, on a course offered by the Art of Living Foundation, which is a global nonprofit focusing on these kinds of courses. And a friend recommended that I do it. And I remember after the very first time I did this breathing, I was laying on a yoga mat somewhere in Manhattan in a New York City yoga studio. And I felt like 20 plus years worth of stress and trauma and junk was just flushed out. I felt clear, clean like a baby. It was a peak life experience. And that is what prompted me to go deeper and to learn how to do the practice at home. And now, fast forward 13 years later, I've been doing it daily and it's part of my routine. So I would say that's been a core sort of formative experience for me, and which is why I've chosen to get more involved and also start teaching these practices about almost 10 years ago now. So that was what occurred for me. I think along that journey to your question about spiritual and material, yeah, I continued to work on Wall Street. I for another couple years after, and then since I've been involved with various growth stage and early stage tech companies, primarily in healthcare. And so it's not like the stress has left me. It's not like the aspirations to close deals or to, do well in my career, um, be comfortable in life have left me. Um, while at the same time, this spiritual quotient has risen in my life through the practices. And I used to kind of wonder, I used to have a bit of a debate internally of, okay, well, am I selling my soul on Wall Street? On the flip side of that, like, am I gonna have enough money if I just meditate or be a meditation teacher as my career? And so for me personally, the truth is somewhere in between, which is for everyone it's different, but that has unlocked a lot of thinking and reflection on this subject of material and spiritual. And my current philosophy on that topic is that we need not sacrifice one for the other. We can have the 200% of life, 100% of inner life, and 100% of outer life. And many people don't realize that. Many people don't even realize that they are sacrificing their inner life for the sake of outward ambition. It just kind of happens because of societal expectation, programming, their own desires, etc. But both, I would say, are essential for a fulfilled life. There's so many people who we've both met on Wall Street, for example. They've been at it for 10, 15, 25 years. they're exhausted. After a while, you kind of figure out how to not burn out and how to keep going. You have millions in the bank, but ultimately there's also a big emptiness inside.
I recently was watching this TV series called Friends and Neighbors on Apple TV. It's set in Wall Street backdrop. There's a guy who is, I'm not sure if you've seen that, but he's ultra wealthy. He lives in an ultra wealthy neighborhood, and his partners conspire him out of his capital account and his accounts. Long story short, throughout the series, they take people in homes and they show the kind of stuff these people have, like 20 Patek Philippe watches, 50 Rolex, 15 Hermes bags, all kinds of opulence, over the top opulence. And they highlight the fact that our lives have become so empty that we have to fill it with stuff. And that doesn't get you rid of this emptiness that becomes bigger and bigger the more stuff you throw at it. American economy is a consumer-driven economy. We are built on consumption. At the same time, all the material success does not lead to solving the problem of feeling empty, as you talked about just now. So there's an art of fulfillment, which is way more complex than the science of getting wealthy. A lot of people can get rich, but they can't get fulfilled. You interact with lots of these Wall Street types, private equity investors, tech billionaires, and you also interact with Sri Sri and many other spiritual leaders who, some of them are wealthy financially and they're very fulfilled. Some are very fulfilled without being wealthy. And of course, you deal with people who have a lot of money, but they are miserable in life. Tell us, what do you see the people who have got the balance right? What are they doing which the other two are not? I mean, nobody wants to have no money and spiritual fulfillment, it seems like. But people are happy to have all the money and no fulfillment. But of course, we want the best of both worlds. So what's this formula? What's the secret sauce to have both of it? I think you are tracking for both of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's two parts to the answer from my perspective. One is sort of a higher sort of MO, modus operandi kind of a part, and then the other is more practical. I'd say at a high level, just even being aware of that, being aware of the need for spiritual enrichment amidst our busy lives of many things that we want to accomplish and many promotions that we want to get and many businesses that we want to build. It need not be also in just business only, even academia is the same. Any part of life, we have ambitions to get something done or accomplish something. So amidst all of that, even having like a little bit of an awareness that, hey, let me not neglect the inner world for the sake of that, can go a long way. And the truth is that many times we've gotten things that we want in life, but they have not fulfilled us, right? Everyone in the world has gotten something or another over the years that they've wanted. And then three days later, the next thing comes up in the mind, right? It's just part of our human mind, the nature of who we are. So acknowledging that, not necessarily running away from it, but acknowledging it and working with it, I think is the key. So that's sort of more of a meta point. I think on a very practical level, just having a daily practice of breathing and meditation. That's it. And by that, I mean like something that's taught by a proper teacher with ideally from a long lineage of sort of a rich tradition of formal and thorough understanding of what works best for meditation and breathing. Because it's such a, and why I say that, it's such a subtle thing, isn't it? It's not an algorithm, right? It's not even if we take sports as as an example, you can have you can try to learn tennis by watching a YouTube video or a series of them, but it's much easier and much more effective if you do it with a coach, right? And at the level of the mind, things are even more subtle than that. So having the right instruction is very important. And that's why I personally went with the Art of Living Sky Breath when I did my own research around. So I'd say those two things combined, having that awareness mentally, but also not just thinking about it, doing something, taking some action towards that on a daily basis can keep us balanced and can keep us on track so that 30 years later, we're not realizing that, oh, I've been barking at the wrong tree.
So talking about what we achieve in 30 years, and then we realize we take stock of how life has been. When you take stock of your life, you have been very successful on Wall Street, you are a finance leader, you are looking at companies and work with companies who actually have make successful exits. I'm not talking about the financial consequence of those exits for you or for the companies, but the cultural consequences. When you have companies who change ownership, they go to either a financial sponsor or they go to a strategic buyer. You have been involved in those transactions. Tell us about the cultural transformation that you see on the other side of it. Like, in your experience, do companies remain the same, or do they change dramatically when they become a part of either a financial sponsor program or a larger buyer?
Yeah, absolutely. What I've observed is that companies do change, um, but it's proportionate to uh, sort of the structure, the level of oversight that the new parent or the new set of investors kind of impose on the company. And it need not be a bad thing, right? Some companies need to change, and it's a good thing if they get acquired by an investor group that is more hands-on or has specific ways of doing things that are known to be successful, right? That's a good thing. But oftentimes in the process, things have to change. People have to be moved out of their positions, or they naturally move on to something else if there isn't this sort of both skill-based as well as cultural fit. But I think when it comes to M&A of between companies or a larger strategic company acquiring a smaller one, that is a bit trickier. And it's very important to give the company being acquired and the team being acquired enough room to do things the way they have been to a degree, or to operate on their own. But again, that's a general comment. Every situation is kind of different.
Technology industry is something which you see very closely, and the business world in general seems to be undergoing an AI transition right now. Now, whatever definition and scope we attach to AI, it seems it's destined to change how we do business, how do we work, how do we operate in a transformative way. Tell us from your vantage point, what are you seeing being done, and what are the pros and cons of this likely transformation?
Yeah. I mean, from what I've observed, and I'm sure a lot of us, a lot of the audience is just seeing how impactful AI can be for anything, for just daily questions or work tasks. Different, every role is different, but there's no doubt that it has tremendous potential still, and it's already had a tremendous impact in the last couple of years. I would say it's also kind of very interesting to watch the emergence of new business models that are informed by that. One interesting thing that I've been following is the notion of a traditional business like RIA, wealth management business, that with the help of AI can work a lot more efficiently, and there is a roll-up strategy attached to it. I think that's very interesting because that there's a lot of greenfield opportunity there from what I can see. It's kind of where high tech meets Main Street, and it can accelerate the adoption of AI while also having a more tangible impact than sort of something that's too far out in the future.
Talking about too far out in the future, there are all kinds of wild estimates of what level of unemployment is going to be caused because of wide adoption of AI. Do you worry about job security for the kids who are in school and coming out of college now, or for all white collar workers, Uber drivers? In general, how chaotic, in your opinion, is going to be the world in 2030s or 2040s when AI actually has replaced many, many jobs?
Yeah. I think it's something that is becoming more top of mind for people, rightfully so. I think the key will be to adjust with the times, to be able to adjust with the times. In anyone's career, that's a key skill, I think. But the rate of change right now, as you point out, is much faster. And so being able to adjust, not being complacent, having an open mind to learning new skills, can kind of switch the context from, oh, is this AI replacing me, to how can I use AI to get an even better job, to progress even faster. So I think that's important. And I think on another level, people can almost outsource the basic things, basic questions, information gathering, those kinds of tasks to AI, which then leaves more bandwidth for our own brains, which are much more powerful than AI, to do other things. And as of late, a lot of interesting things, especially with education of young kids, have emerged on that front that I've witnessed. There is an institute called the Institute of Absolute Intelligence that I've been following as of late, and there's a lot of cool breakthroughs there that go beyond AI into what are the frontiers of possibility for our own human intelligence.
So that's the micro perspective. On the macro level, we do expect to have systematically larger amount of unemployment in the years ahead. You saw a reasonable amount of unrest in the world growing up. You and I both are international citizens. We have seen countries and geographies impacted in a transformative way because of macro trends like large unemployment, crazy high inflation, or general unrest. US is at the forefront of AI innovation, and thus it seems that a massive amount of unemployment is on the cards. Do you worry about some level of unrest among people when a large amount of unemployment comes by because of massive AI adoption?
I think it's inevitable. If we look at history, different times when there's been periods of very meaningful technological disruption, there's been people, it's probably a bell curve, right? Early adopters, people who are kind of in the middle, and then people who are really kind of set in their old ways, who would rather make a lot of noise than kind of adjust. I think it's part of how transformation takes effect in society. Now, having said that, there are ways to to mitigate that. And they're either through regulation or general societal awareness, which happens over time, of how do we work with this? How do we help people along the way if they're impacted and they don't quite know what to do? If they've lost their job because of AI or things like that. Before it was outsourcing, now it's being outsourced to a computer. All these kinds of things, even outside of pure subsidies, at a societal level, there can be reskilling work that can help and kind of even bringing that top of mind to the agenda of what people talk about and civic leaders, what they talk about. I think that's a very important step.
So from the catastrophic potential impact of AI, let's switch and talk about what is happening because of that to the possibilities. There are people who worry about AGI, AI taking over the world. Now, someone of Elon Musk's caliber also talks about that being a potential problem for mankind. At the same time, nobody is stopping AI, at least in the current form. There are not many regulations which say what they can do, what they can't do. And frankly speaking, to the best I understand, there's a lot of hallucination that AIs do, and they reach certain decisions and they make certain recommendations and people are following it. What are your views on regulating AI? Do we need to worry about regulating it, or let it be a free for capitalism and see what comes out of it?
I think some level of regulation is prudent for things that are high severity. Like you shouldn't be able to run all of a hospital's infrastructure on through an AI bot right now. You know, like not that I don't think anyone is even trying that just yet, but who knows, in a couple of years that may be happening. I think having some regulation is helpful. And if anything, it can be supportive to the further adoption of AI into the mainstream and into mainstream services as well.
How widely is AI used in the current businesses that you are involved in?
Depends on the business model, but I would say, 10 to 40% of processes are materially impacted by AI and or use AI even instead of human work.
So you have a pretty good view of what Silicon Valley is doing. You deal with many high-tech, emerging tech companies. US's global dominant position has been challenged in the recent past by many other countries, including the Ukraine war, which of course we know we haven't been able to stop or get control in spite of our best efforts. Our technology domination is one way through which US has remained a superpower. At the same time, we hear about new tech coming out of different places, like China got their AI capabilities, and then NVIDIA stock was suffering one day. Now things are getting better, but we always worry about new technology coming from other countries, which can question our dominance. With your vantage point of what is this world looking like, do you expect US to continue to be a major player or the most important player, or is there something we need to worry about?
I think I would expect the US to continue its sort of pole position, but we in the country need not be complacent because there's, especially speaking of AI, I think out of China, other parts of the world, there's a lot of innovation happening. I think the US has some structural advantages, such as pretty efficient capital markets and allocation of resources and rule of law, freedom of speech, etc. Some of those have been challenged recently, but overall, still probably at a much better place than other parts of the world. And so I would say that for us to maintain the pole position, we need to also ensure that we're not forgetting those structural advantages and continue to invest in human talent. So one of the big reasons technology is so strong here is that so many people come as you and I have as international students and then stay and decide to benefit American GDP with their talents. And so ensuring that that continues to happen, that the top brains from the world have a reason to come here and stay, I think is one important sort of avenue to maintain that dominance.
You touched upon something which was in news recently. US experienced a population decline in 2025 because one of the two sources, childbirth and net immigration. The second one didn't work so well in last year, and the population has declined. Now, that's one of the drivers for talent increase, GDP increase, and truth be told, some of the best tech leaders we have in the country, Google founders, Elon Musk, they came to US through an immigration process. That process itself has been under a lot of cloud in last 12 to 18 months. What are your views on what the current government is doing about that? And is there, in your mind, a better way of handling this? I mean, the pros and cons. It's not that the illegal immigration should be welcomed, and it's not that it should be handled the way it's being handled right now. I'm no expert in public policy, but we all hear about things and we all have cogent views. What's your view on the current administration's actions and their somewhat questionable outcomes?
Yeah, I would say there is politics, but there's also uplifting human values and upholding the foundational elements of what makes this country so good and what has attracted so many people to come to this country. So I would say that, yes, of course, it's natural to want to follow, institute certain policies based on people's interests, but at the same time, this cannot undermine just basic human values.
Perfect. We're almost at the end of our conversation. I'm holding my most important question for the last. What's your legacy?
What's my legacy?
What do you like a legacy to the world to be?
If I saw this t-shirt someone was wearing on a college campus, or no, it was a mug, and it said, I helped a man climb a mountain once, and I also realized that I had reached the top.
Very powerful.
Yeah, I would say that.
Excellent. Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, this has been a great podcast. I've followed some of your recent other guests. And you get to meet a lot of people. I've worked with you separately. What inspired you to launch this podcast, and what have you found to be most surprising, pleasantly surprising about it so far?
So podcasts undertaken by people for some of the following reasons. They want to get a potential client through the process. That's a proven model. They want to network with people. Or in some cases, they just want to create a business out of the podcast. So if you have a certain number of views and likings, then start making money through social media channels. Our objective is none of those. Occams, as you have known, wants to be a thought leader in middle market advisory and the kind of stuff that we do, financial strategy, tax strategy. Our goal is to bring in leaders who can talk about their experiences, but not necessarily in the business context. So if I can say uncommon insights from common matters on a daily basis. So we haven't tried to go and get people who make headlines in news or anything of that sort. We're simply trying to bring in business leaders who are in middle market, who are visionary, have experienced business and life in different ways, and bring those insights to our audience, which is consistent with what we stand for as an organization. We want to tell our clients about how to build wealth, about how to build quality organizations, have a balanced view, like you and I talked about, having been material success as well as a spiritual success, and not just running after one over the other. So that's our objective so far. What I have learned is that it doesn't matter how well I know somebody, like I know you pretty well. I have met you several times in person and had many conversations with you, but I learned something new about you today, about how you started into art of living meditation or what your views are on certain topics. So it's a great time to get to know people from me personally. At the same time, I'm sure our audience gets a lot of good insight from this because we have been getting hundreds of thousands of views on some of the podcasts. So overall, it's a very rewarding experience. And I plan to continue it the way it is right now and to get more and more people. If there's somebody that you would like us to reach out to and bring them on the podcast, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. That's great. I appreciate you thinking of me.
One last thing, Emil. If you want to ask a question for somebody who shows up on a podcast in the future, not knowing who that person is going to be, what will that question be? It's almost like pay it forward. Like you got so many questions, you answered them. If you leave one, we'll save it in a bank and we'll ask the next person.
Yeah. I would say imagine yourself as if you're as an 80-year-old. What would your advice be to people in their 20s, 30s, 40s at that time?
We'll leave that exercise in imagination for the next guest. Thank you very much for your time today. And we look forward to bringing this to our audience.
Amazing. Thank you, Anupam.
Thank you, Emil.